Welcome back to the Heavy Boots Podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Camille. Today's episode, we'll be talking about assumptions and patterns. Why we make them, why we notice patterns, do they help, do they hinder? If they didn't text me back, does that mean anything? I'm failing in life because of this. All of these things that we think and assume are true. Are they really true? There's so much to unpack. So why don't you grab yourself a cup of coffee, maybe a cuddly cat, get comfortable, and let's have a conversation. Let's get into it. Hello again. Thank you for stopping by. I hope this finds you well and that life is treating you kind. It's so good to be back in this space and to just talk about things that frankly keep me up at night. I think a lot. I journal a lot. You know, I'm at my desk, and if you saw my desk, you would be like, are those all journals you write in? And I do. I write and I think, and I just constantly have something ruminating. And so I thought, why not write it down for the podcast? Maybe other people would like to hear about it. And it's a great place to start because I assume that people would like to hear what I have to say. But I also assume that they don't. And there's been a pattern in my life where I take criticism more than I take compliments. And I think it's something that's just, I don't know, kind of a human thing. It's hard to take a compliment or to, really let praise sink into your bones and to feel it within. I at least have a huge problem with feeling like anything I do matters. And that can lead you down a really depressive spiral if you don't just continuously pull yourself back and share your voice. Because, I found that the more that I share, the less I feel like I don't matter because I'm doing something, I'm producing something. And even if it helps one person, it matters. And honestly, if that one person is just me, it matters. Because we all have our place here in the world for a reason. And I feel like if it keeps me here doing something, that's a brilliant, reason as well. So it's just, assuming is such a big thing that we do. It's a big topic, and I am so guilty of assuming. And because I'm an empath and I grew up in, stability and then not stable, and then stability and not stable. So back and forth trying to figure out, when the next shoe is going to drop and it's going to go back to not stable, that kind of thing. It definitely gets you into a place of watching patterns. And so that's why these two are together, because sometimes the assumptions are based off of patterns. And patterns, you watch patterns, and it's a way to control, though. I think it's a way for our minds to feel in control. So if we see this pattern happening, then we can go, that's exactly this, and sometimes it's not exactly that. But as a person who had to, protect herself a lot against a lot of different things in life, as anybody, we're all you know, we're all critical thinkers and we all look at life in different ways, but we have those human tendencies of A, B, and C happens and then this will happen. Like it's just like, it's a math equation that we get used to. And it's a survival skill and a protective, mechanism. And so these patterns unfold and we think we know what the outcome is every time. And sometimes that's not the case, or sometimes we're projecting onto someone else the patterns of somebody that hurt us. And so we assume that means hurt. So there's a lot to go into, but basically patterns to me is a way to really feel like we know what can happen to us. And there truly are patterns. Like I'm not saying that we're just making this up in our minds. There's patterns of things that happen continuously and the same result unfolds. And so we think we can use that to every circumstance, though. A lot of the times we think we can put this on top of this situation and it'll be the same. And there's contextual things, and there's, shades of different colors, and there's different reasons. The human experience to me is never black and white. It's never black and white. And so we try so hard to get it to be black and white. We need it to be right or left, or yes or no. And sometimes it's maybe. Sometimes it's in the middle, And so that's hard for us as humans. And so I don't know. So this topic is already 7 minutes in. I just went, boom, let's talk. So I feel like patterns in my life have kept me safe in a lot of instances. And then there's been patterns that I just did not pay attention to where I could have kept myself safe, and I just ignored them as well. And those are the regrets that you have of like, why didn't I just see that pattern? Like, how did I miss that? But when you experience something over and over again, you just know what to look for. And so there's this safety sense. So I've had a lot of things come up where a person will come into an establishment that I'm in, and my spidey senses is what I call it. My spidey, I just sense energy, which is a whole different thing, I know. But like, if you start watching that person and the energy of that person, most of the times they'll do A, B, and C, so they'll be erratic. They'll start messing with someone at the bar, if we're at a bar, or like, I think that, this one time it was a restaurant and a bar, and this man came in and I just felt his energy, and then I watched his behavior, and it was very erratic. And then he came to sit down at our table, and I was very not caught off guard. I was very in tune, actually. It caught my mom off guard. She was with me, and I saw all of it within a span of a minute. And then I told the waitress to get him to leave. And my mom's like, what is wrong? Like, what? And so the pattern of an erratic behavior, I've had to deal with that with many people in my life. And so I saw it come in, and I assumed that he would harm us. I did make that assumption. But as it turned out, he was very volatile to another group that he went and sat with. And so my assumption was correct. And so sometimes patterns do save you. We weren't in like dire harm or anything like that. But like, I didn't want to have the interaction that he had with the other people. And so I saved us from that. You know what I mean? Like, just intuition. Sometimes patterns and intuition can really create a safety net. So patterns aren't always bad. But like, if they didn't text me back, that was one thing that I was thinking about, like, interactions with people and like, well, they're doing A, B, and C online, but they can't text me back. So then you just assume that, they hate you or they're mad at you or some gossip got to them that tainted your reputation and now you're blacklisted. All these things that you can do in your brain. And it's awful what you do to yourself, really. Um, and honestly, it could just be that they're really busy. They can post online, but they can't, text you back for whatever reason, or they don't have the information you wanted or whatever. And it's like, why create the whole narrative that something bad is going on, but it's so easy to do because it's just like, well, everything's so fast paced, so why, and you have to wait, what's going on? But it's just, assumptions honestly only hurt you. And so it's really important to try and stop the wheel from turning, because it's so easy to get into a whole different place and scenario in your head. Also too, like, making decisions based off of those assumptions is really bad. So like, oh, I don't want to go see her, she never texted me back. And it's like, well, why don't you go see her and ask her why didn't she text you back? Like, you make decisions based off of assumptions. You'll never have anything in life because nothing's based on truth. So the difference between patterns and assumptions to me is that patterns can help. Sometimes they really do help. And the only time that it becomes an assumption instead of a pattern is when, I don't know, so if someone hurt you in the past, like a boyfriend, say, and they were looking at their phone all the time and they didn't text you back right away, and, turned out they were cheating. Okay. So those are three things. Well, now you have this great new relationship with someone and they're on their phone and they didn't text you back, so they must be cheating. When you go, even though it's a pattern, when you go to the assumption instead of asking, that's always the wrong way to go about it. So like the pattern in the restaurant scenario was something that I had experience with, and yes, there was a minor assumption that that man was going to harm me, but there was more ambiguity in the whole situation to where you kind of have, I don't know that person. And so you have to go off of a little assumption based off of all of these things that line up to get to safety, get away, When it comes to a personal relationship and you actually know the person and you think, well, my last boyfriend was always on his phone and he didn't text me back. So, my new boyfriend must be cheating because he's doing the same thing. That is such a sad place to end up because you're not asking the questions. And so, my current boyfriend loves to be on the phone because he's constantly looking at antique things to buy and like, just like auctions. And then he loves baseball. And so baseball is really crazy right now. And so he's always on the phone. And sometimes when he's at work, he won't text me back. And it's usually because there's this big old room he has to go in with a suit on, and he doesn't get to take his phone in there because it'll get messed up. And so if I text him in that span of 2 hours, there will be no text back. And so if I just use that pattern against him, I would have nothing. So it's like a balance of, of acknowledging the pattern though, because if something worries you, you're human. And so like if you see a pattern, just acknowledge it. And that's the other thing that I think happens a lot, is that we assume people are all out against us. because, well, they didn't do this, or they're usually so kind or so nice, and they usually, you know, what have you. And sometimes they're having a bad day. Sometimes they got bad information. Like if there's one person in the group that is trying to stir trouble or try and get everyone on their, bandwagon against you, and this one person that you thought would never be on that side of things seems like they're on that side of things, go talk to them. Like, a lot of the times I've really ruffled some feathers, honestly. At least in the workplace. I don't work in an office anymore because I can't handle all that energy. Oh my gosh. So much energy and difference of opinions, and like, I don't know. I've just worked in office spaces for almost 30 years of my life, and I had to get out of there. I guess 25 years, because I haven't been doing it for about 5 years. And so it's just, in offices, someone will come and say something to me that somebody else said. And then I would just go to the person who they said this, so like, I'll just say it like this. So like, I don't know. So let's say Jane comes to me and tells me that Emily said something bad about Denise. Well, so Jane tells me that. So then I go to Emily and I say, hey, Jane told me you said some crap about Denise. And then Emily will say, no, I didn't. I never said that. And then I'll go back to Jane and be like, hey, she said, she didn't say that. Just like to clear the air and like to, fix whatever kind of games sometimes people are playing too. Like, sometimes there's some games being played. And so this one time, keep that scenario, Emily was upset that Jane said she said that. So Emily went to Jane, and then I was in the hot seat. They were so mad at me, not Emily, but Jane was so mad at me because I had told Emily. And it's like, if it was a lie, then why did you say it? It's almost like trying to get people in trouble. I was a supervisor at that point, and so it was like trying to get Emily in trouble. And it's, to me, the best thing is just to go to the source, get the facts, and don't assume, especially in a workplace. I couldn't assume because I was the boss at that point, which didn't last long because I hated being the boss. No, thank you. But anyways, assumptions and like going along with the group and just blindly following is never a good thing. And it can be the other way around too. So if someone says something to you about someone and it seems like out of character for that person they're talking about, like, go talk to that person directly and find out their side of the story. It gets really annoying to me, like, when a whole group of people can just shun one person or two people and like, all the time that we've had, all the patterns of different behavior of caring for you and like being in good graces, like none of that matters. You're just going to take that one word of somebody else and then, poo-poo everybody. Like, it's very interesting. And there's also motives. I understand, like, if they're telling you what you want to hear, it's easier to be on their side. Or if they're a hard person to deal with, it's easier to just side with them and not have to deal with stuff. I get all that. It's just, it hurts. It hurts sometimes. You can really hurt people. And, yeah, assumptions are no good. So it's definitely a shortcut in our mind. Like, it's a form of control. You got to fill in those gaps. You've got to make it all make sense and like shut it down. If there's something ambiguous or not figured out, when you're left hanging, or like, it just something doesn't add up. A human mind can't handle that. And so it has to fill in the gaps. It has to seal up the story. And sometimes it's not with facts. And sometimes it's really, really assuming the worst. And so assumptions can be really harmful. Because A, B, and C doesn't always equal D, you know? And yeah, so, but patterns, I think, you know, spidey senses and knowing certain street smarts, you know, there's like certain things that hit your gut and you're just like, oh no, this doesn't feel right. And like, that to me is different than assuming. Because most of the times, too, that stuff is happening with people you don't really know. And sometimes it can. I should take that back. Sometimes it can happen with someone you thought you knew. And I think in those instances, when you think you know somebody and they're, you know, exhibiting A, B, and C, you got to just ask and dig and be a detective and get to the bottom of it before you can, you know, just assume that they're the worst of the worst. You know, it's very hard. And relationships can really suffer by assumptions. And like, you know, there's assumptions within ourselves too. Like what we think society thinks of us, what we think our parents think of us, what we think siblings think of us, what we think people we work with think of us. Like, if we don't cultivate what we think of us, then we can start to take on those assumptions, you know, and a lot of it's not even anything anyone's told you. But even if they have told you, so like, for instance, I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but like, I had a brutal character assassination at a certain point in my life that was just unwarranted and undeserved and just like unfathomable. Like someone that you want to trust, want to just have good feelings for and everything. And you've given them the benefit of the doubt in so many cases, and they come at you and they just tear down every slice of your life. Just like, this is bad, you know. That's their opinion. And when you take that on, you're assuming they're right. So that's another facet of this, is the assumption that anyone who is giving you their perspective of your life is right. That's why it's so important and it's so hard. And I swear I'm only just getting to it at 45 years old to have a steady hand on who you are so that nobody can take it away from you. So that if someone says really harsh things and just like cuts at you, you know, just a death by 1,000 cuts, that you don't die, you know, that it doesn't kill you, that it doesn't offend you so badly that you can't recover. Because I'm just recovering now from that character assassination, and I thought I was recovered, but then someone else, you know, says something similar, and then you go, oh crap, that still hurts. And now someone else is saying it, and then it's like, oh, they must be right and I must be wrong. And it's just not a service to yourself, because it's not true. So you can't assume that other people know better than you. But in order to know that they don't know better than you, you gotta build up your whole fortress of strength, of yourself, of your power, and know that you were made exactly how you were supposed to be made for some function in this world. And sometimes it takes longer for others, you know, for any one of us to find why we're here, our purpose. And that's why I do so many things. That's why I do this podcast. That's why I, you know, create photograph greeting cards. That's why I write blogs and write poetry. That's why I sing when I can. That's why I paint. I create art. I give people gifts that I create. And I do all of that because I'm trying to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing. And I love all of it. I love all of that. Everything I just said, I just love it all. And so somewhere in there is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I figure if I just keep doing, it'll come at me, And I recently just started writing kind of a biography. And it's called Less Than. I think. We'll see what the title ends up being, but I've just spent a lot of time feeling less than. And I've been playing this new game on the New York crossword app or whatever, where Wordle is. It's called Pips. And it has taught me again what less than means. The symbol. Man, it took me back. It took me back to elementary school when you learn. I had to keep looking that up. So it's this dominoes game and you have to put the dominoes in the right squares. Sometimes it'll say less than 5 or more than 5 in a box. And so, if it says less than 5, you make sure that it's 1, 2, 3, or 4. And then if it's more than 5, then you have to put the 6 in there because it's it's not dominoes. It's like dice, I guess, because it's just 6, 1 through 6. So anyways, it's really fun. It's really challenging, but I have to keep re-looking at what less than and more than means. Cause I when I was a kid, man, it was like you made like teeth on it, So it was like, this is chomping, 6 is chomping 5 because 6 is more than 5. But I even with the visuals, I'm having trouble. So anyways, so less than kept coming up to me. And so I was like, but yeah, I'm just writing a lot too. And so I don't know, some people think I should just focus on one thing and just do that to the best of my ability, but I might have ADHD. I think that's the big topic right now. Maybe that's what it is. I just like to be doing all kinds of different things because it taps into different parts of my brain. And honestly, it just keeps me going. It keeps me feeling alive. I don't know how I got off topic, but yes, I don't know where I was going with that. But basically, I just think that we can't assume that others know better than us. I guess that's where I was talking about. And so my life doesn't make sense on paper to anyone. I don't make a ton of money. I don't use my talents, hone them in a way where I could make a lot of money. I don't make sense to a lot of people. And, and some people are also jealous of that, unfortunately. I've had people say things about the art that I make. Oh, I wish I had time for that. And it's I make time. I know that I have a different kind of lifestyle and I have today off to do this podcast and to write and to work on a lot of my projects. But I'm never idle, and I choose to spend my time creating, and that's no slight to anyone. Whatever, I just wish that we could all get to a place where it's you do you, and no insults necessary. I don't know. And then my little, a-hole in my brain is saying, well, you must be insecure about that because she just, said, oh, I wish I had time for that. And that's about her, not you. And it's the tone and the way, was not too kind. And when you're giving someone a gift, it's I don't know. It's just funny. I just would never do that to somebody. And so that's another piece of it too, is assuming that people are as you are. And that's totally not the case. Unfortunately, people aren't as kind as you are. And also people aren't as vindictive as you might be. There's a lot of people that believe that I operate the same way that they do. I want, an estate fortune at the end of someone's life. I do not want that. I would rather have them here with me. We don't operate in the same way. And we assume that because we want this, then everybody must want that. So it's, fight to the death. And it's like, no. So a lot of things going on right now. So, assuming that we operate in the same way, assuming that we do things or think things or feel things in a blanket statement is just, it just takes away from the whole human experience, because humanity is supposed to be a collection of different kinds of people. And yes, you find your people that, emulate what you feel and have a lot of similarities, but there are supposed to be facets. We're supposed to learn from each other. We have to protect ourselves with these patterns of behavior too. And like, your time gets more precious as you get older. And like, when people were saying that to me 10 years ago, I was just like, okay. And it's so true. It's like, I feel like this life is long though. I know I've said this on here a million times, but this life feels very long. It's not that I want it to end. Like, I'm not saying that. It's just that I have lived so many lifetimes and I've done so many things and I'm tired. And I'm to a place now where I'm able to say no more, and I'm able to figure out exactly, what works for me and what doesn't. And like, I'm not willing to be in a place that puts me down, and I'm not willing to expend energy where it doesn't matter, like, I know my worth in a lot of ways. I say that and I get a little cringy because I wish I knew it more. I wish I knew that I added, something to the world. But I know that I have a very lush inner mind and world that is at least keeping me here so that I can help the people I love, and the ones who don't understand me, or the ones who assume, and don't ask, or don't. The vulnerable piece too is like, everyone assumes that you know what they need. And it's like, no, you have to ask for what you need. And then also too, like, assuming that everyone works the way that you do, operates the way that you do. Like, your love language is not my love language. So why should I have to only operate in your love language if you're not going to operate in my love language? Like, there's these things of compromise and like values and consideration for people is like so freaking important to me. Like, I give and give and give many, many, many chances to, treat each other right. And when I feel disrespected over and over and over again, my wall just goes up and my boundaries up. And sometimes I disappear. Sometimes I'm right here, but you can't get to me because I've been exhausted by the interaction. I cannot expend my energy any more than I already have. And it hurts me. Like, everyone thinks, oh, she's just off and gone and she doesn't care. Or, she looks aloof. She looks like she's so happy and fine. And if you read my poetry, you sure will know that that's not the case. But having boundaries and, not being happy-go-lucky and just going along with everything is actually really hard. Like, it is really hard to put on the happy face and fake it too. Like, but there's just when you actually step into what you can handle and like you start respecting yourself, it hurts you so bad to see how many people don't respect you and like don't respect what you're doing for yourself, or or even like, just like family too. Like, there's all this, which I have a whole nother thing on that a couple months from now, but I'll touch on it briefly so I don't, put my toes in that too much, since I'm going to talk about it. But like, we assume that family means that you can, some people, I'm sorry, some people assume that family means that there's blind respect. That I can tell you all these horrible things about you today, but I'm your family. So tomorrow you will be sitting with me and we'll be fine. I don't work like that. I don't know what, there's so many families that do that. I abandoned you in your time of need, but now we're going to go hang at the beach and be cool. I don't understand that. Like if there's some big conversations happening and there's some apologies and everybody's cool, that's great. But if it's never addressed and you just go to the beach and like, I don't know. I just feel like that's a disrespect to yourself to not get an apology from someone who tore you down. Yeah, and then there's some people too where it's just like over and 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 over again. They show you who they are. And so you don't need an apology and you don't need a forgiveness or anything. You just need to take yourself out of the equation. And yeah, and so that's a little off topic, but it's just like, assuming the things that people say about you is so harmful to your psyche. And I have a couple of voices in my head that aren't my own, that I still haven't untangled. And it's a process. It's a daily grind to try and get those things that were said, because they're like statements said about my character, about who I am. And I try really hard when I'm, because I have stuff with people. I'm not saying that I don't, I'm a big letter writer or an email person, and I have a hard time not crying when there's a confrontation. And most of the men in my life don't like when I cry because we can't have a conversation. And plus I don't feel strong. And I think it's very strong to cry. So I'm not saying that, but it's been made out to me that crying is a weakness so many times. So when I get frustrated in a conversation, when I don't feel like I'm being heard or whatever, I will cry. Frustration and tears is my MO. Like, it's like when I'm angry or I'm going to cry, or I'm frustrated, I cry. And so confrontation is hard. And so I'll write, because then I can get out my stuff and then they can get out their stuff. And most of the times it doesn't work out well for me, because unfortunately I just get back a lot of critical stuff. And I try to go into it with feelings of like, this is how I feel, or when you say this thing, I feel, like I'm rarely do I call people names or attack their character or, try and bring them down in a way that I've had done to me that's been soul crushing. And so I try very hard to be very deliberate with my words, is to say, this is how I feel, like, and I need help, or, and like, I understand that you can't receive help if you don't ask for it. So like, and and that's honestly just a newer revelation. And so I've asked for help and I don't get it. So the thing is that we also have to, and that's another topic, but grieve, what we don't have in our life. Like, there's so many different forms of grief, and finding out that someone you thought you could count on is not there for you is another form of grief. And so you just got to go through that, but back to this. I keep going off topic because I came up with all the things for the next year of topics to go through, and so they're all bouncing around in my head. And so I can't step on their toes. I don't want to go into them, but yeah. Also, we can assume that people are as good as we are. I think I touched on that before, but and everybody has flaws, and so nobody's perfect or anything like that. But like, when someone shows you a pattern of disrespect over and over again, to assume that there's goodness in there that you should just hold on for and that it'll come out and that you'll, you know, find common ground and everything will be better again is also detrimental, because the pattern of consistency of, you know, not being respectful or caring about your feelings or listening to you or even showing any sign of interest in what you have to say, or, you know, that just there's certain patterns of the way that people make you feel. And sometimes it could be that, like Maya Angelou said, people will, you know, forget what you said, what you did, but they'll never forget the way you make them feel. And so like if you don't feel like you could say anything, or you don't feel respected, or you don't feel like, you know, the relationship is even worth saving, it's better to, you know, let it go than assume that it'll get better. Sometimes we stay in things or we try so hard at our expense, our detriment, and then, you know, we wake up one day and we're exhausted. Like, and I feel like that's part of what's happened in my life, is that I just continue to, you know, try and mold myself or try and be a version or a little smidge of whatever anybody wants me to be at the expense of who I am. And I'm tired. And that was a lot of my childhood, unfortunately, is that for attention, you know, you try and do the song and dance and like, here, I need you to look at me or pay me some attention, so I'm going to say the thing that you want me to say, instead of like, why can't I just feel interesting? Why can't I just be interesting with the things that interest me? You know, why do I have to cultivate just what you like and bring that to you when you're not bringing what I like to me, you know? And it's funny how one-sided relationships, you know, sometimes we don't even realize how what someone expects from you is not anything they'd ever do for you if it was reversed, you know? It's such a revelation that I had a few years ago of like, oh wow, what they expect of me, they will never give me. How is that fair? Like, what you expect from someone else, you should be able to do for them, or at least want to do for them. Like, I know, like, you know, when you get older, you can't drive to see someone possibly or whatever, but like, you could say, I would love to come visit you, but I can't, you know, certain things, you just feel it out. You know what intentions and what people really want to do for you. And yeah, and it just, once you realize there's a lot of one-sidedness, or like, I don't know, like I do a lot of cards and a lot of mail that people don't ever send me back, and I don't expect them to. I know that's a dying art, what have you, but it's like very few people say thank you. The list of sending stuff out, you know, is not as long as it once was, because the energy that it takes to, you know, to show how much I love you is not being returned in any fashion. I stopped keeping up on addresses for certain people because, you know, one, they either told me in person that I'm not a real cousin, or I'm, you know, I don't matter, like you feel it, or, you know, you just never get acknowledged in any way. And so it's like, and you know, that's not why you start doing it. But when it's 25 years in and nothing comes back, it just falls away. It's just a natural progression of self-respect, of like, oh, I'm putting a lot of energy out and hopefully they'll know I love them, you know? And I do get sad about it, because it's like, you know, you don't want people to assume you love them. You want them to know it. But the ones that, you know, the ones that you take an effort to make sure they know, they'll feel it. And so, I don't know. It's just one of those things. You get older and you have less output because input needs to match. Like my therapist one day, she was telling me, and I still reject it. Somehow in my brain, it's still like, I can't accept that. But she was saying that all relationships, once you become an adult, no matter who it is, your siblings, your parents, family, friends, all relationships, once you become an adult, are reciprocal. Like people should give you what you give, and vice versa. And so I've just never, it's just a rarity. And so it's like, wow, well, if that's the case, then I don't know. I'm in a desert. I'm giving my water out and I have nothing, you know. That's how it was feeling. So I've adjusted, and there's many people in my life that do show me, and that's the other part, is to not focus, on the wrong aspects, like on the negatives or the, those who you wish would, instead look at those who do. And I am so grateful, for those who do. So anyhow, when it comes to, self-reflecting, I think that's the big piece of it, is just not to assume that the voice in your head is always yours. And it sounds crazy to question your voice in your head, but it's, programming, years and years of programming from society, from parental units, from teachers, from anyone who's ever said a cruel word to you. It can get stuck in there, man. It's like a craw, stuck in your craw, they say. It's just like a weed, and you got to pull it sometimes. And it takes a couple times, unfortunately, sometimes even more than that. And because if it gets said to you more than once, it is so ingrained. And yeah, but so that takes self-reflection to understand, am I contributing to this pattern? So if you are creating a pattern of telling yourself that you suck, even though you know you don't suck, but somebody told you that, and so then you know, how we all do, we internalize things that are just not ours and not true. And so we have to notice those patterns too, of what are we doing over and over again and expecting a different result? Because, if it's not working, it's not working. And I think that healthy boundaries are important. I think that if someone creates a boundary and you're questioning why, or, it makes you feel something, there's a conversation to be had. Just ask, is that because I did something? Did things change? What, you weren't doing that before. And I think that's the biggest piece, is a lot of people don't want to be vulnerable, and they don't want to act as if they care, and they want to act like they don't need anyone. And really, it's worse for you if you don't, because you sit with all that. And so then you assume, oh, I did this, so that's why their boundary went up, or a million different things. But so the vulnerable piece is so important, because I think a lot of people won't ask for help because they don't want to act like they need help. They don't want to seem like I'm vulnerable, or I'm weak, or better, And it's well, some people do know better. Some people have experience. Some people just want to be there for you if you would let them. But a lot of the time too, it's there's so many instances where somebody's asked for help, and then you go to tell them, and then they're like, well, I already have this way and I'm going to do it this way. So it's this whole conversation. Did you just want to have some companionship? Because you already knew what you were going to do, and you seem annoyed by my answer. So why did we have this hour-long conversation, if you already had the way? There's that too, where it's oh, But two, it's just like ask for help. Like, I don't know, and ask for what you need. Just ask. Like, if you don't ask, you'll never know. And there's nothing weak about asking others for help. Like, I don't understand why we get so alone on islands. And like, I'm totally guilty of it. Uh, but honestly, the few times I've asked for help, the ship keeps on moving right past my island. So that's the thing though, is I can't assume, here we go, self-reflection time. I can't assume that the next boat that passes won't help me. So I have to continue to ask for help. Hey, there's a practical example. You can't assume that just because someone didn't help you the last time, that this other so different person won't help you this time. And that's the thing too, is like, even with the same person again, we shouldn't assume that they won't help. Like, everyone's in a different spot at all different times. And I do think that, 3 strikes you're out is too many times. I think twice is enough to find out if someone, who someone is and who, how they treat people. And like, to be honest, it takes about 18 times before I just cut the cord. It takes me a lot longer, but when you really hurt me or you really disrespect me over and over and over again, it gets hard for me to even come back and acknowledge any kind of relationship or anything. And so, yeah. And it's okay. Certain people, though, too, are not meant for you, So, like, when it's family, it's much harder. And, like, I'm not saying to never, never come back to the table there. But, like, extended family and certain people that have said the cruelest, harshest things to you or talk so much crap behind your back that it's like, wow, it's stinky in here about the manure that keeps stacking on up. um, there's just like, yeah, you don't need to be shoveling that crap. Like, it's not worth it. And so there's just certain things and certain boundaries, and there's in family too. I mean, not to go back to that topic, but it's just like, you are allowed to have feelings. You are allowed to require people to apologize if they said horrible things. You might have to ask them or explain to them that they need to apologize again, which you shouldn't have to. But you are allowed to not go back to just everything's great after people say really hard things. And most people will know and be self-aware that they said those things. The ones who are not and think they can just come back in with rosy glasses on, those are the ones who don't respect you and don't respect anything about anything, that has to do with you. And so in those cases, unfortunately, the best thing to do is have boundaries. And I don't know, because you do not deserve disrespect. And the amount of narratives and the things that people will spin to make it that you're disrespecting them will make your head explode. And so just let them believe what they believe too. It's like, you don't have to get on a soapbox and tell them. You just are unavailable from now on. But with people that respect you and love you, like, don't assume the worst just because these other unhealthy folks have done A, B, and C, and now your friend is doing A, B, and C. Investigate. Like, again, I think 1 or 2 times, and these are like real things of like, I don't know, lying or, being dishonest or whatever. Sometimes people are going through a hard time and they don't know what to do. And they're trying to survive their own experiences. And so, and again, you don't need to put it at a cap of 2 either. I'm just saying that, like, if it's something like really tied to values into their core, core makeup that is not lining up with yours, and they do that over and over a couple of times, to me is like, okay, this is who that person is. So I'm going to be done, you know. And then if it's somebody you have to be around, you be as cordial as you can be, but you have to protect yourself because nobody else will. And you have to lay down at night feeling good about yourself. And so if someone's just going to beat you up and make you feel small, make jokes that are actually hidden insults, it gets old and your body, it just doesn't sit right. So I think that it's important to have boundaries. And then too, like, don't respond so quickly to anything that comes at you. So like, if somebody writes you a bunch of stuff, that's a character assassination, or like, that's harsh. Just one or two things. One is you can literally just not say anything back and let it stand, because especially if it's something really harsh, you don't need to acknowledge that any other words are correct. So there's that. Like sometimes responding right away, or like, circling back and like creating a whole back and forth, is actually acknowledging that the words that they said had any kind of merit or stock in your life. And sometimes don't give the satisfaction of that. Sometimes their actions or words should be like, didn't even hit anything on your radar. You know what I mean? Like, because it shouldn't have. And even if it did under the surface and you're hurt or whatever, you got to realize that some people don't care what you have to say and they're just set on misunderstanding you. So let them, and then, don't respond too quickly either with like something back to just hurt them back, because it's like, I don't know, rarely does it go well. You have to really stop and think about your words before you just go off. Just be mindful. But it's all like, all of this stuff is stuff that I'm saying to get into my brain as well. So like, these are things that I think about and I'm putting it out there again so that I can just digest it and try and let it seep into me, because it's a daily grind being human. And it's a daily grind being human if you care and if you have any self-awareness. So like, if you're never thinking about how you move through the world, this podcast won't be for you, because that's all I do is, what did I do wrong? And I'm working on that, because that's not a way to live either. It's like, what did I do wrong? And it's like, oh, nothing, girl. Just exist. Just be. So I think that's about everything I wanted to talk about. Just be good to yourself. Just know that sometimes there's going to be motives for people to, drag your name down, but don't assume with the people that have not shown you who they are. Go investigate, like, and that's the thing too, is some people too will be like, well, this person really hurt me, so you shouldn't like them. And it's like, okay, there's two people to every story. And like, of course, I will investigate. And I validate your feelings. And that's the other thing too, is like, there could be a person that really hurt this other person that you end up, or that you say them, both of them. And then this person hurts that person and you love both of them still. You know what I mean? Nobody hurt you and you weren't in the hurt, so you can't know all the sides of it. It's just very tricky to assume you know what goes on between two people. Even if you hear both sides of it, it's if you weren't there, it's hard to just write off one of them. You know what I mean? Because our perspectives and our heated energy when we're angry or frustrated, all those things come into play. And so just taking somebody's side blindly without talking to the other person, that's assuming. And that is, creating an army of pitchforks. A village, the villagers going up to the castle to get the beast. Do you remember that scene? You just don't want to be part of a group that blindly hates. Ever, in my opinion. So investigate, don't assume. And, don't assume that people are thinking the worst of you just because they have in the past. And, different people, don't assume people are out to hurt you just because they have in the past. And don't assume that everyone is good just because you are. Some people will show you who they are. And so don't assume there's something else in there. If the pattern, has shown you over and over and over and over again, there's nothing to trust. Because to me, people have the ability to change. I don't believe that there's no redemption. There's a lot of people that write people off too, and I don't believe in writing people off. But there has to be, apology, changed behavior, actions that are different in order to even consider that there's someone in there that's different than what you know. Like, that has to be shown to you. But I do believe people can change and there's room for redemption and all of that. It's just, you have to be good to yourself. And so, yeah. All right. I hope that this was an interesting topic. I kind of just rambled on for an hour about it. It's something that I think about a lot because I make many assumptions and I'm actively trying to unravel those. And I believe in the patterns, showing some truth, especially when there's a gut instinct or, someone's shown you their pattern over and over and over again. Believe them, Patterns aren't always a bad thing. You just can't. I think any of this stuff, you just can't go blindly. You have to investigate. So, may life treat you kind. May you investigate anything that doesn't. May you know that you are worthy, that you are a beautiful creature on this earth that was put here for a reason with a purpose. And just because you may not have found it yet doesn't mean that you won't find it. And sometimes you don't even understand your purpose. Sometimes you have such a purpose. If you would just look at what you do with your day every day and how many people it affects, your purpose is there. That's the other thing, is sometimes we don't even realize how many people are affected by just our presence in the day and who we take care of and who we show up for. So just own more of that. Just sit down and write out your day and how many people count on you. It's pretty powerful. And it matters. And you matter. And I thank you so much for listening, because you matter to me, obviously. It's a very purposeful discussion that gives me hope, keeps me going, brings me joy, and I feel alive when I talk about stuff like this. And sometimes that's all we need. And if one person listens to this, I thank you. But to everyone, I wish you a beautiful June. Stay you. This podcast was written and recorded by Jenny Camille. The song that you hear at the beginning and the end of this podcast is called Little Victories by Andy Ellison. Thank you so much for listening, and check us out at www.simplegirlinspired.com. We have cards and books, many things for you to check out over there. Thank you so much for being here. Stay you. Psst. Are you still there? Well, hi. Thanks for staying all the way to the end. And just to thank you for your generosity of time and spirit, here's a little ditty for you. Ain't no talking to this man, ain't no pretty other side, ain't no way to understand stupid words of pride. It would take an acrobat, and I already tried all that, so I'm gonna let him fly. Things can move at such a pace. The second hand just waved goodbye. You know the light has left his face. You can't recall just where or why. So there was really nothing to it. I just went and cut right through it. I said, I'm gonna let him fly. Ooh, yeah. There's no mercy in a live wire, no rest at all in freedom. The choices we've been given, it's no choice at all. No, the proof is in the fire you touch before it moves away. Yeah. But you must always know how long to stay and when to go. And there ain't no talking to this man. He's been trying to tell me so. Took a while to understand the beauty of just letting go. 'Cause it would take an acrobat, and I already tried all that. So I'm gonna let him fly. I'm gonna let him fly, fly. Oh, I'm gonna let him fly, fly. Oh, I'm gonna let him fly.